You're listening to Francis Oblivion and the Mad Undead by J. Johnson Higgins. This audiobook edition is a Kiss the Widow production.
Chapter 13. The Old Journal and a Bit More Than a Talented Mentor.
Journal of Adrian Eckenrode, October 19th. I began to look at the world in a slightly different way, and its shadows deterred me from venturing into them. It began with the Journal of Diego Aza. After reading the journal entries of Becca's great-grandfather, everything became eerie to me but clearer. This was not just a strange time, but now a centennial reaping for which we were the main bounty. The sky was not just the sky. It was an abyss of mystery intent on swallowing us whole. The ground was not just the ground, but the dirt under which we would all return, assuming some part of us was not consumed by the mad undead. I feared meeting a violent end given our situation. I thought of the mercilessness that Francis and his followers showed Diego's companions. I was now the single companion that was expendable by the most treacherous and barbaric of means in the eyes of Francis. I was a meal for his 54 mad undead to feast upon and leave nothing behind, or possibly the man to be cut down by something random and have his face stolen during Becca's pursuit to fool her. I was her Arnold Locke, her great-grandfather's companion in the Vanes War, and I needed to be on alert for danger. Now I better understood. This was the source of Becca's initial reluctance to keep my company outside the sanctuary and her current insistence on special protections. I began to believe that the sounds around us were hostile precursors to violence. Some of this was in my head, but some was not. Luckily, Becca was 10 moves ahead of danger most of the time. One could become reliant on her forethought and addicted to her safe company. I now understood better Becca's seemingly overprotective behaviors and obscure statements such as,
"I'd come across a number of items lately, but I had to pass them up. I found a pistol, for example, but if I'd have kept it, I'm sure it would have been used against me."
Becca explained.
"Now that you're here, I have 2 reasons to keep it out of my sight."
These random words suddenly made more sense to me as I thought of Arnold Locke's death and Francis's invincibility to things like weapons fire. Who would we blame for a misfire now that Francis was everywhere and nowhere, and we were the only ones who could die by the shots? Becca theorized that if something went wrong because of a pistol in her possession, our chances of dying increased to near certainty from it versus any other possible injury. A risk that she was not willing to take with me or herself. Francis was sure to cause a misfire and make the bullets find us somehow, as that was his specialty, and he'd had several modern wars to sharpen his craft. These were the kinds of thoughts that stayed in my mind, and apparently the ones that she obsessed about routinely, and for good reason. Allow me to give an example of this seemingly random activity that, in hindsight, was Francis making a run on my life that Becca averted. Becca had taken me with her to explain her preparation of the lighthouse grounds and the general surroundings when suddenly a tree branch, from one of very few trees on that part of the property, broke away right above me. The odds seemed unbelievable for it to happen in that moment. If Becca hadn't pulled me out of the way and deflected the aggressive and unnaturally tumbling limb with a flash from her hand, Earth's energy, she later told me, I'm certain I would not be here to write this. I offered to cut up the fallen tree branch later, and Becca snapped back.
"Are you fucking kidding me? Cut up the branch? No!"
she exclaimed as she snatched the saw from me.
"Just stop."
She later apologized for reacting like she did, but I completely understood after reading the journal. I felt mortal like I'd never felt before, and it made life seem extra precious to me. On the other hand, I felt less alone. I thought about Becca quite a bit more around this time and began to more greatly appreciate her and all that she'd been doing. I felt a warmth in the pit of my body from just thinking of her. Despite what Becca said sometimes about being cursed or being a magnet to bad luck, there was not a safer person to be around, largely because she was in such control of her world and everything that surrounded her. She could command the forces of nature as easily as she manipulated her motorcycle. It at least appeared easy for her. She tended to do well with setting and achieving goals. She did not go so far as to say that she did not fail at her goals, but she came close by saying,
"If not this time, It will be next time when I get it right. I just need to make sure that there is always a next time. That's why we plan so that there can be one. And have protections in play. That means looking very far ahead.
I realized that I too was in her greater field of influence. I wanted to be like her, driven and not afraid. I admired and trusted her so much that she could probably ask me to do just about anything in the world for her and I would. I've never met someone quite like her. Why was she so different from anyone else? Well, I was invisible to this world until Becca entered my life. I mean, yes, people saw me, worked with me, and interacted with me because they pretty much had to. But they didn't put eyes on me and truly look all the way through like Becca seemed to do every day without fail. It was a combination of looking out for me, studying me, and advocating for me all at once, after some brief and honest reflection. A cycle of this inside of her head, in her copper eyes, and occasionally behind a cigarette as she stood or sat across from me. It's difficult to explain. Sure, her looking at me quenched her academic and pagan thirsts, seeing a student and a magical respondent, apparently. But those things ran secondary to wanting to know me as an individual, a sort of strange bonus that only she could really appreciate. This was all new to me, having someone truly see me. The narratives I once used daily to define myself now had a second tier of review and by a person who had some enduring interest in my outcomes. She always seemed to have me in her thoughts when she decided things. I was part of her greater vision for this world, and I needed to be the best version of myself in order to meet that world and keep up. I felt this subconscious and Hawthorne obligation to simply be better than I was thinking was enough for me. That is, I felt extra motivated in a way that simply didn't exist before I'd met her. I was motivated to be both better than I had been and to emulate her. It was like Becca could see inside of me to the man I've always known was there, but no one else ever seemed to take the time to meet or know. This was easy for her. She was already doing it the day she met me. I wonder sometimes if my attraction to Becca is the same kind of attraction that others experience. That is, I could never be sure of how much of this attraction simply existed on its own terms and how much was maybe the residual of Becca's spell to summon me. Or should I say call to me? She corrects me on the semantics over and over, saying that she did not summon me, but she instead called out and I answered.
There's a difference.
She'd said while munching on one of the tiny apples she'd picked recently.
I wanted you to be here and you reacted to the call, at least subconsciously you did. I didn't force you, we just didn't know each other yet. That's not a summons. It just means that you're my guy. It's as simple as that.
She took my hand and lifted it up, wrapping her fingers into mine.
Don't you feel it?
She asked, and I must admit I felt something warm and joyous between us as she looked into my eyes.
A summons doesn't feel like that, not even close.
When she put my hand to hers, I felt quite a bit more than just contact. How much of it was me simply liking her though? There was not a clear answer. Maybe it's fate, where the calling somehow knew I would like her. There is something so captivating about knowing that she drew me to her deliberately without knowing me personally. That I was a best fit for her on some level that she left in the hands of the universe and to this day she accepts as a given. But is that the end of the spell? Is it still working on me and manifesting itself in the form of sexual energy now, or is this just me trying to explain away a natural attraction? Otherwise, I'd bonded even better with Becca since reading the old journal. If I became unusually reflective, she could, with her eyes only, tell me that she somehow understood the source of my pensive stare, but she would not stop there. She would entertain the thoughts and ask me about them. If I didn't want to talk, she would just sit with me in silence and rest her head on my shoulder. She would enter my space and transform the very molecules in the air into something heavy, beautiful, and perhaps joyous on occasion. I owed her a great deal for this. I remember telling her again about the morning that we met, how I'd started flashing back to the ghouls over and over, thinking of how it could have gone differently. I didn't realize that it was so profound for me until later when the incident started blending with my recurring nightmares. You should understand that the nuclear blast was the root of it all. A horrible experience that I have nightmares about regularly. The creatures that chased me the other morning exacerbated my fears. My recurring nightmares started including them too, even during the day. I started seeing the blast, running and hiding in the garage, but then, after thinking I was safe, getting grabbed by the mad undead and torn apart in the darkness. Becca has helped me get a handle on the dreams though. I remember saying, I thought I was going to die that morning. After everything that happened, I thought that was it. I thought I was going to die, and I'd almost accepted it.
But you didn't. You kept running. That's what's important. Don't forget that.
Becca quickly added.
Even if you're afraid, just know that I have this whole thing figured out. I have them figured out now, and I won't let them touch you. Protecting you is actually my job if you're my respondent.
I was taken by the confidence in her response.
If they try anything, I'm going to hurt them so badly. You have no idea.
She briefly closed her eyes.
Sort of like I'll do to you. If you don't stop talking like that.
She teased and tossed a pillow at me with a smirk.
Stop having nightmares, you weirdo.
You're not afraid of them even a little bit?
Well, yeah, of course. But not like I used to be. Now, I just find them really annoying. They force me to get up extra early. I don't have an alarm clock, you know.
She quipped. But they seem so dangerous.
That's true, but looking at it another way, I'm also dangerous to them, and I think they know it. They started behaving a little differently after they realized it. It's mutual.
Becca interjected.
I understand them and know their weaknesses, sort of like how they know mine. I've developed contingency plans for my interactions. First, they're very predictable and mostly reactionary. They have a one-track mind, and that is always how you outsmart them. Secondly, in the end, their interaction is mostly physical, just like a person, a particularly drunk person, despite being supernatural and fast. They're dangerous, but clumsy. They trip over things. They go down if you hit them dead on, and they're really kind of dumb when you step back and watch their behavior. That's how we're going to win. Don't let them freak you out, babe. Even in your dreams. All kidding aside, I can teach you how to control your dreams,
she said, grabbing my hand.
I can teach you to make them lucid so that you can beat them there, too.
Becca taught me to control my dreams. She did breathing exercises with me, meditated, even a sort of hypnosis. I must admit, after the hypnosis, the nightmares were almost non-existent, and I'd slept harder than I'd slept for probably months. The nightmares weren't completely gone but were considerably milder or not memorable.
Did you sleep well?
Becca would ask, and there was something in her eyes that said that she already knew the answer to that question. Becca was a person of experience in several ways to me. She was like a mentor to me in life in general, but also the inner workings of this strange world with its magic. This realm was in her blood. She knew how to make it work for her using research, spells, and her good nature. In sharing the old journal, she was sharing a family member's private thoughts and inviting me into the place she was so used to. Her great-grandfather's journal was rather interesting. I was also maybe a little envious of the fact that she had a definitive record of her family that went back beyond her great-grandfather. I could not say the same, as I'd never even known my true birth parents. I must have involuntarily expressed this because she made a point of saying that regardless of knowing them, there's no one quite like the person I am.
You're making history right now in everything you're doing,
She'd said. She was showing me the mystery and at the same time showing me that there were answers to be found despite the darkness. There was something intimate about this, as simple as it was. This respite at the lighthouse gradually became our short-lived opportunity for a brief celebration of our unity, of finding one another in a vast empty land by what looked like chance but was actually by Becca's magic hand. The property was a haven as far as we knew. We were not sure when or if we would have an opportunity again for this kind of shelter with a serene backdrop and many resources. This lighthouse had basic things such as places to start fires for cooking or heating if we needed them, wood and charcoal, a pantry, non-perishable food, general supplies stored away, a garden, a well for water completely unrelated to the city system, which was an absolute mess now, as well as bottles of water and so forth. It was not too far away from the farmland we'd passed, which was a convenience, but Becca stressed that we could only go to that area in the daytime and strictly under her protection. With the things we had available, I started work on preparing some good food for us. Anything more imaginative and tastier than what I'd been accustomed to on my own this last year would do. As with most things, Becca took over or at least joined that project before I'd gotten too far, which I don't regret. We cooked on the fire, which was very good grilled falafel. It was spicy and delicious. I learned that Becca lives a mostly vegan lifestyle, by the way. I'm not one, but being around her, in some ways, turned me into one too as far as my diet and daily practices were concerned. One of my old roommates was a vegetarian, not a bad cook either, so one could say that my appreciation for the diet had some earlier roots that Becca merely returned me to. I wouldn't say that she was pushy about it, but she made clear that it was important to her for several reasons, including sustainability, ethics, and perhaps something more spiritual at its core. I'd been debating in my mind which pissed her off more, Francis and his followers' impact on humans or their impact on the animals. Maybe the animals had won this a long time ago. I'd gotten a sense that Becca wanted to stop Francis for what he'd done to our human world. That was the original lighting of the fuse, but when we came across dead or dying animals, those were the moments I was sure Becca would succeed. She regretted not taking greater steps to protect them too, but conversely feared what impact temporarily removing them would have on the world from an equilibrium perspective. She also had her share of gripes about humans in general and voiced them.
Mother is probably happy to have a break from us and the messes we make,
Becca said, referring to the Earth, of course.
Is it negligent of me to bring humans back, knowing how we are? We keep choosing to do the stupidest things as a collective, and I'd be bringing that back. Don't get me wrong, there is some good, and I'll bring us back, but the peace is nice.
The lifestyle suited her. It was just the way she operated, with or without others, and I sort of fell into it by being in her company. I would tease her every now and then, though. What do you think of fishing? I asked. Would it bother you if I fished? This area out here is ideal for it. I mean, just look at it.
For several reasons, I can't say I endorse it.
Becca replied and thought for a moment.
True, the mad undead avoid the water, so there would be less of a risk to you for being near it. But while their aversion to water implies their minimal impact on aquatic life here, I still consider our impact, however small. I consider all life precious, including the fish. That's my opinion, since you're asking.
She sighed.
Just keep your gross ways to yourself and we should be fine.
You mean, you wouldn't want to join me?
I view it as unnecessary and cruel when we already have what we need here. I don't want to see it, smell it, or anything like that. Be sure to clear any outings with me first, though. It's still dangerous out here, more so because of Francis than his followers, and that's more important than either of our preferences. Remember that.
You'll always have an open invitation to join me, if you'd like. I started. You know, for protection and
I will always respectfully decline. I've already told you it upsets me, and I'm not interested in that activity,
she said.
If you're trying to impress me, you might try a different approach. Ask me to go by the water for any other reason, and I'll be there. Ask me to maim or murder fish again, and I swear I might have to maim or murder you instead. Be smart. I don't usually give people this many strikes, but I like you, at least so far I do.
I'd just be catching and releasing them.
So, you'd hurt them, then just throw them back?
Becca shook her head and rolled her eyes.
Pass.
There are other ways to do it without using a hook.
Thoughtful, but no thanks. If I want the fish to come over to me, I just ask them.
Then she turned.
Maybe I can show you that instead, as long as you promise to leave them alone afterward.
Such an odd thing to say, but I did accept and respect her preferences, and I could see by then that she knew I was only teasing. Later, she expressed it.
I'm glad that you respect the things I do and the way I do them. It means a lot.
Becca said. So, now that we've bonded, you'll go fishing with me? Hooks and all? I asked.
Fuck you.
She said with a little laugh as she showed me her middle finger and shook her head.
I swear, if you don't shut up with that.
I wanted to make this little time special for Becca most of all. That was my immediate goal. It was a thank you for saving my life. It was also her birthday this month, and I knew this because she mentioned that she was born on the cusp of Libra and Scorpio. I eventually learned that the day was October 24th this year, and that served as an approximation of her actual birth date. I used October 16th as an opportunity anyway, given that we'd likely end up missing her special day if we ended up on the move again, and would not likely be in a haven like this again until the conflict was resolved. I gathered from the way Becca was talking that she was very near making her move on Francis, whatever that meant. Days like this were numbered, and this was to be her day. Recall also that she'd mentioned a fall festival in Siena that she really enjoyed. The equinoxes and the solstices were sacred to her, and she said they were worth her reflection and dedication. Our arrangement was nowhere near the intensity of a festival and perhaps later in the season than it should be, but it was the thought that was important here. I'd taken steps to replicate the themes and provide a makeshift outlet celebrating the season that meant so much to her. I made her a crown of leaves and twigs which she playfully wore like a queen several times throughout the day. I still owed Becca my life and wanted to help her out in any way that I could, but I felt a little useless to her as a companion in every way. There was little I could help her with, and when I was not helping, she was still so much brighter and better at everything than I was. I fancy myself a writer, but Becca has written and published much more than I have. Books, articles, and not just nonfiction either. She would say, however,
I don't write like you, though. My writing is usually functional and feels less polished. Yours is smooth and engaging. Stop making comparisons. It's not worth the energy. Work on that.
but I kept making the comparisons, so maybe I did need to work on it. Even in leisurely things like simple debates, chess, or when we played pool. There was a pool table in this lighthouse that happened to be missing the blue-striped 10. She beat me every time.
I'm starting to wonder if it's ethical to keep playing against you and stuff like this. I'm thinking it's not.
She would joke. But that was only the beginning. Whenever a question needed an answer, she had it. She'd literally thought of everything months or at least weeks ago and had arrangements in play that I knew nothing about and could not possibly improve upon. Whenever I tried, she would remark, but with a strange respect. Maybe one of us should check the other side of the hill around sundown to be sure we're in the clear, I suggested.
The sun sets at 6:02 p.m. tonight, but because of the landscape and the cloud cover, we'd have to leave earlier. I'd done it every night I'd stayed here. I was actually intending to have both of us there tonight this time. There are a few things I want to show you about that area that I may need you to be responsible for regularly going forward. Are you up for that?
We told time by the sun as best we could, but the specific time she'd given was based on an almanac in the shed with her motorcycle. In that respect, it was always better to overestimate. Generally, when I recommended X, she would show me her pre-planned and executed X+1 and say,
That's very observant of you.
or,
I appreciate that you brought that up.
she would say these words and absolutely mean them. No jokes. She was not being sarcastic as I'd seen her in other instances. She had many interesting words for me and my role, such as,
You're helping me more than you know.
and
Keep doing what you're doing, listening, suggesting, and asking questions like you are. That helps. Even if you don't think so. I want you to know that it's really important for me that you do.
but how could it be? If she didn't have the answers, she surely found them with a strange spontaneity with no visible struggles or need of assistance. She was one of those people who could produce answers and build arguments as tight as a knot before your eyes without any preparation. Yet she claimed it was the direct result of having me sit with her as she went over her thoughts out loud, bouncing them off of me. She gauged reactions and reworked her thoughts as she voiced them. She said she was more productive this way, and I was like a co-pilot to her who assured that best practices are adhered to. She said that she'd always been that way, which was why she liked teaching college-level courses so much. She discovered or refined her ideas as she lectured with effectively an entire room of smart co-pilots or beta testers. She said that she enjoyed the upper-level classes the most because they became smaller, more specific with the subject matter, and were very conversational. I could see her leading discussions of this kind with knowledgeable people. Speaking of knowledge and my deficiencies thereof, I did not know how to ride a motorcycle, so Becca was always our driver and retriever of things initially, if not the delegator of this activity. She felt compelled to teach me how to ride and convinced me, saying that we may both depend on it if it's the only working transportation we have access to. She said that I needed to understand it.
I promise I won't let anything happen to you on it. You'll have so much fun. Well, at least I will.
She joked.
Trust me. You do trust me, right? Come on.
She'd say as she pulled my arm to the door. The action evolved into a flirty tug of war. I resisted her for fun, but I'd never win with charm on her side.
Come on. You're getting on the bike.
While in the process of receiving her instructions on the motorcycle, I'd taken the opportunity to ask a question that had been burning inside of me for some time. That is, how did she happen to come across this one working vehicle while simple objects, such as watches, didn't even tick with a fresh battery in them? Her reply,
I own the bike to begin with, and it goes everywhere I go. It's always been that way.
Becca answered and then elaborated.
I'd enchanted it once upon a time, long before all this stuff started happening. Protection affirmations can go a long way, and so can these.
She called my attention to silver protection decals and markings in easy-to-miss places, along the front suspension, beneath the seat and the passenger pillion.
I'd like to say that these have something to do with it, a combination of these things. I'd originally put them here to protect me while I'm stunting. Now, they mean so much more. Beyond that, if you're looking for a surer answer, I'm not sure what else to tell you. I don't have just one that fully explains it. I have a truck that I used to get around before too. I used it to transport my bike for competitions and regular errands. The truck won't start now either and hasn't worked since the flare. It doesn't have the protection decals. It's back in the city. The failing machines are tied to Francis, but enchantments like these can overcome him. I'm thankful for it. The bike working, that is.
She paused and thought before adding.
Let's not jinx it by questioning it too much. Good question, though.
It was a peculiar response, but an honest answer, and one that I'd simply have to accept for now. She'd been right about everything else unbelievable so far, so why should this be any different? Whatever protective force granted her the courage to face Francis on her own must have allowed her to pardon her motorcycle as well from the world's chaos. I too was thankful for the machine's reliable operation.
This story is 100% original and written by a human, yours truly, the author. AI was not used to write, prompt, organize, or otherwise generate this story. This audiobook edition was, however, created using licensed text-to-voice software with a lifelike casting and intonation manually adjusted and refined line by line by me, and art in and of itself. The theme music was written and produced by Kiss the Widow. If you like what you found so far, please like and follow, subscribe, and share. Also, please be sure to check out my socials.